Welcome back, lovely ladies. If you want to become the woman of your dreams, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And join our Patreon for even more exclusive content. Now, let's dive into today's story.
Jake's hand hovered over the espresso machine one last time before closing the small coffee shop where he worked. He was 28 years old, lean, with close-cropped brown hair and a kind face that hinted at his gentle nature. The cafe where he spent most of his days was unremarkable, but he took comfort in making each cup of coffee with great care. As he cleaned up the last few cups, his phone buzzed. He sighed, wiped his hands on a towel, and checked the message. It was from his sister, Samantha. She was 6 years younger than he was and owned a maid cafe. She had poured her heart into the place, but business was faltering. Their parents had taught them to go after their dreams, though the family had never been wealthy. Samantha had dreams of making her cafe a haven for people who wanted a quirky and lighthearted experience. Lately, however, she had been reaching out more frequently, sounding worried. Jake read her text. "Jake, I'm desperate. I'm down another maid. And sales aren't improving. I need new ideas. Think you can swing by tonight? The cafe closes at 10, and we can talk then." Jake slid his phone back into his pocket. He looked at the neat row of coffee cups on the counter and ran a hand through his hair. He respected how determined Samantha was and had a strong desire to help her. They had always been close. She used to watch him practice latte art at home years ago, and she had once mentioned that he could do it in front of customers one day. That never materialized. He ended up as a barista at a run-of-the-mill coffee shop, while she ventured into opening her own place. He admired her dedication, and now that she was struggling, he wanted to step up. Half an hour later, he stood outside Samantha's maid cafe, which was in a quiet corner of the city. The neon sign glowed a pleasant pink. Inside, he saw a couple of customers finishing their meals, guided by a single maid in the signature black and white uniform. Samantha was behind the register, looking tense. She was in her early 20s, with long brown hair that matched Jake's in color if not in style. She wore her own version of the maid outfit, a more modest rendition, given she was the manager, and greeted him with a brief wave. "Hey," she said as soon as he stepped inside. "Hey," Jake replied softly. "Everything okay?" They waited until the last customer left. After the door closed, Samantha locked it and flipped the sign to indicate they were closed for the night. She turned to him with an anxious expression. "Not really. One of my maids just quit. She landed a more stable job, so no hard feelings, but the problem is I'm barely hanging on." "Have you considered scaling down or adjusting the format?" Jake asked, leaning against the front counter. She nodded. "I've tried, but the place is too niche. People either love it or they just see it as a novelty. I know a lot of the regulars come in for the atmosphere, but there aren't enough to keep the doors open long term. I've got a few loyal customers, but it's not enough to offset the losses." Jake folded his arms, thinking. "You could try new marketing strategies, hand out flyers, post more on social media." "I have," she said. "It's not that people aren't interested at all. The issue is that I need something fresh to grab attention. A new face, maybe. Something that stands out in a positive way." Jake gave a thoughtful nod. "You want to hire someone brand new, but how soon can you do that? And who's going to handle training?" Samantha's eyes flicked to the half-open door leading to the back. "I was hoping maybe you could pitch in some way. You know, since you're free in the evenings." Jake tilted his head in confusion. "Me? I mean, I can make coffee or help with the menu, but that's not going to fix the main draw, the maids." Samantha bit her lip. "What if you fill in as a maid?" He froze. "That's a joke, right?" "I'm serious," Samantha said quickly, raising both hands as if to calm him. "Look, I know it sounds crazy, but you're good with customers. You know how to serve tables, and frankly, This place might just get a second wind if we have something unique. A male staff member disguised in a maid uniform is unusual enough to spark curiosity. Jake stared at her as if she had lost her mind. No one's going to buy that. I'm too tall. And my face? I'm not exactly the most feminine person. Samantha cast a critical eye over him. You're not huge, though. You're lean. And we can do something with your hair. Maybe add a wig. I've seen plenty of transformations online. Besides, if it's done right, maybe people will just see you as a slightly taller maid. With the right makeup, it might work. He frowned, tapping his foot against the floor. Is this really what you want me to do? You're that desperate? I am, she said, voice trembling slightly. I hate to ask you for this, but if it saves the cafe, I'll do anything, and I trust you. You won't treat the customers poorly. You know how to be polite. We'd figure out your new persona, and we wouldn't let anyone find out you're my brother. Jake was silent for several moments. The thought unsettled him, yet he couldn't deny he wanted to help. Finally, he cleared his throat. I'll think about it, but if I do it, it's just temporary. As soon as you find a real solution, I'm out. Samantha nodded eagerly, relief washing over her face. Thank you. It's more than I could have hoped for. And don't worry, I'll take care of everything. I'll get you an outfit, we'll go shopping for a wig, and we'll practice the makeup. He gave a short laugh, half in disbelief. Yeah, I guess we will. That night he returned to his small apartment. He stared at the mirror in the bathroom for a good while, mentally picturing what he might look like. It felt so bizarre, yet he also felt a small sense of purpose. Perhaps his presence could indeed bring in more customers. If his sister's cafe ended up successful, it would be worth the strangeness. The following evening, Samantha brought over a sealed clothing bag, a wig stand, and various makeup products. Jake took a long breath as she laid everything out in his living room. The maid uniform was black and white with a frilly apron, petticoat, and lace-trimmed hem. It came with stockings, black shoes, and a little headband. A brown wig with bangs sat on the stand. Right, Samantha said, kneeling beside the coffee table where the makeup was arranged. We'll start with your face. I watched a tutorial, so I think I can do this. Don't expect perfection at first, okay? Jake nodded and sank onto the couch, trying not to think too hard about how surreal this was. Sure, let's just get on with it. She applied a primer, then a foundation, a shade lighter than his skin tone to soften his features. She added concealer around his eyes, explaining each step as she went. He tried not to move too much. Then came eyeshadow in a subtle shade, eyeliner, and mascara. She brushed his eyebrows carefully and used a product to shape them into a more delicate arc. Now, let's do a test with the wig, she said, placing the wig over his short hair, which was pinned down. She adjusted it to frame his face. There. Jake stood and walked to the mirror. He gasped inwardly at the reflection. He wasn't about to pass for someone else entirely, but he had to admit that if someone only glanced at him, they might see a woman. A bit tall, yes, but the illusion was there. Let's try the uniform, Samantha said, offering him the garments. He slipped into the outfit, feeling the unfamiliar swish of skirts and the snug fit of the bodice. After some fumbling, he managed to get everything on. The lace stockings felt odd against his legs. He stepped into the black shoes, which had a slight heel. Samantha clapped her hands softly in approval. It's not bad, Jake. I mean, obviously, if someone looks super close, they might suspect something. But with the right posture and mannerisms, you could fool a lot of people. He felt a hint of nerves flutter in his stomach. And you think the customers will be into this? She nodded with a determined look. Yes, I think so. We'll call you Jenny. That's simple enough. Let's practice a little before we debut you tomorrow night. The next hour consisted of Samantha instructing him on speaking in a slightly higher pitch, but not too forced, smiling more often, and walking with a softer step. Jake felt increasingly silly, but Samantha kept reassuring him that it was fine, that no one would judge him once the illusion was set in motion. On Friday evening, Jake arrived at the maid cafe after finishing his shift at the coffee shop. He brought a bag with everything he needed: wig, uniform, makeup supplies. Samantha directed him to the back room, where he changed and prepared himself. His heart pounded as he considered stepping out into the dining area. He reminded himself that this was for his sister. When he opened the door to the cafe floor, the 3 other maids were hurrying between tables, greeting customers. Samantha waved him over. The place wasn't packed, but there were a good number of patrons, mostly men, but also a few women. Some people looked up, eyebrows raised, noticing the new maid. He tried to keep his composure as Samantha introduced him to the other employees. They had been told that a new female worker was joining. He could see the initial surprise on their faces, but most of them gave polite smiles and welcomed him. One maid, Clara, whispered, "Welcome, Jenny. You look lovely." She had a knowing glint in her eye, but said nothing else. Jake swallowed and forced a bright smile. "Thank you. I'm a little nervous, but I'll try to do a good job." Samantha handed him a small notepad. "Just start with that table over there. They're regulars but easygoing. Offer them some tea. See if they want any of our pastries." Jake glided over, remembering to keep his steps light. The customers greeted him warmly, albeit with some curiosity. He took their orders, writing carefully to make sure he kept his composure. By the time he delivered the drinks, his confidence was slowly building. None of them seemed to suspect anything. During a lull, Samantha rushed to him. "You're doing great. I already see people whispering about the new maid. Looks like you're generating interest. Keep it up." He felt an odd mixture of relief and awkwardness. Never in his life had he imagined he would be wearing a frilly dress and wig. Yet, if it kept the cafe afloat, he would push through the discomfort. Soon, the evening drew to a close. One last customer lingered in the corner, a young woman wearing a loose cardigan and glasses, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was sketching in a notebook, occasionally sipping from her teacup. Jake walked over to see if she needed anything. "Hello," he said softly, fighting the urge to drop his voice too low. "We're about to close soon. May I get you anything else?" She looked up, startled. "Oh, sorry. I was just so into my drawing. I lost track of time." She studied his face for a moment. "You're the new maid, right?" Jake nodded, aware of his curled wig brushing against his cheeks. "Yes, I'm Jenny. Have you been here before?" She gave a small smile. "A few times. I'm Lily. I like the atmosphere here. It helps me focus on my art." She glanced around. "You all are quite friendly." Warmth spread through Jake's chest at her compliment. "I'm glad you enjoy it. We'll be closing in about 15 minutes, but there's no rush if you need a little longer." She nodded, tapping her pencil against the page. "Maybe just a few more minutes. I want to finish this sketch. It's a simple outline of the cafe. I like capturing how people interact in these kinds of spaces." Jake found himself watching her eyes dart back to her paper. She seemed shy, but there was a quiet intensity behind her demeanor. "You're an artist?" She shrugged. "I try to be. Still figuring out my style, I guess." Jake nodded, then remembered Samantha wanted them to maintain a light, upbeat interaction. "Well, if you ever want extra references, I'd be happy to help, though I'm still learning the ropes around here." Lily gave a small smile. "I appreciate that." He walked away feeling a subtle sense of connection. Something about her earnest way of speaking drew him in. Before leaving, Lily called him back, and he returned to her table. "You know," she said, adjusting her glasses, "I was a bit hesitant when I saw a new maid, but you're doing really well." I hope to see you again. Jake felt his cheeks heat up beneath the makeup. That's very kind of you. Thank you. I'll look forward to it. Over the next few weeks, Jake settled into his new evening routine. By day, he worked as a barista at his usual coffee shop. By night, he changed into the outfit and wig, becoming Jenny, the maid who brought a breath of fresh air to Samantha's struggling business. Word started to spread that there was a taller maid with a gentle but engaging presence. Some came out of curiosity. Others stayed because the staff offered a genuinely kind experience. Jake discovered that the biggest hurdle was not fooling the customers, but dealing with the unexpected sense of performance he needed to keep up. He had to watch his body language, voice, and gestures. Yet, after a while, the movements became second nature. He discovered he actually enjoyed the sense of camaraderie with the other maids. They teased him gently, but they also knew how to keep a secret. Among the growing number of patrons was Lily, who came at least twice a week. She rarely spent more than the cost of a cup of tea and a small pastry, but she stayed for hours, either drawing or quietly observing. Over time, Jake learned more about her. She was in her mid-20s, trying to find her footing as a freelancer. She lived alone in a small studio apartment filled with half-finished canvases and sketchbooks. Though she was soft-spoken, he could sense a reservoir of creativity within her. One night, as the cafe grew quiet, Lily waved him over to her table. She had begun to show him bits of her work, quick sketches of cafe scenes, detailed character designs, experimental portraits. I'm trying to capture the way people look when they're relaxed, she explained. It's something about the atmosphere here. It puts me at ease. He tilted his head, fascinated by her drawings. They're beautiful. You have a real flair for subtle details. Look at how you captured Clara's posture just right. He tapped the paper gently. She smiled. Thanks. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever make a living off this, but for now, it's enough that people enjoy seeing what I do. Hearing her talk about her artwork reminded Jake of how Samantha felt about her cafe, full of devotion, uncertain if it would pay off. That parallel made him empathize even more with Lily. I think you'll get there, he said earnestly. Talent like yours finds a way. Lily gave a small laugh. You're sweet. By the way, do you mind if I sketch you sometime? Jake felt a jolt of surprise. Me? Yeah, Lily said, her eyes flicking to the wig and the frilly uniform. I think you look interesting. You're not like the other maids. I've noticed how you move, and there's something a bit different about your presence. He swallowed, worried she might be picking up on his secret. Oh? Different how? She shrugged. I can't put it into words. Maybe it's just your height. Maybe it's the way you talk to people. But something about you intrigues me. Jake forced a light laugh. Well, if it helps your art, I'd be honored. Samantha watched them from behind the counter. Later, she whispered teasingly to Jake, Seems like Lily likes you. Careful you don't blow your cover. He muttered back, I know. It's harder to keep up the act when we have actual conversations. She's bound to notice something eventually. Samantha patted his shoulder. We'll worry about that when the time comes. Right now, you're doing great for the cafe. We're finally seeing profits inch upward. Indeed, the place had begun to fill more regularly, thanks largely to the novelty. Comments on social media mentioned Jenny, calling her the new star attraction. It wasn't just men that showed interest. Many women found Jenny's polite demeanor refreshing. Jake was relieved that Samantha might be able to save her dream. One evening, Lily stayed later than usual. The other maids left after their shifts, but Jake lingered to clean tables and wipe the counters. Lily was lost in her sketch, but he could see fatigue in her eyes. Samantha had already gone to the back to do inventory. You okay? Jake asked, approaching her table. You look a little tired. She brushed a lock of hair from her face. I'm fine, just been working all day. I got a contract to create illustrations for a small publication. It's exciting, but the deadlines are intense. He nodded, genuinely pleased for her. That's a great opportunity. Don't push yourself too hard, though. She set her pencil down and sighed. Yeah, you're right. The truth is, I'm having a bit of a creative block. I keep second-guessing everything I draw. I worry the client won't like it, and then I start all over. Jake slowly sat down across from her, mindful of his posture. If it's any comfort, I'm sure every artist feels that way at some point. There's always going to be doubt. She looked into his eyes with a hint of curiosity. Do you ever feel that kind of pressure? He hesitated, carefully choosing his words. In a way, yes. I'm doing something new and unusual. Sometimes I worry about being discovered as not being what people expect. But I keep going because I want to help someone I care about. Lily's gaze softened. That's very kind. I can sense you have a lot going on beneath the surface. I'm grateful that you share a bit of it with me. He offered a faint smile, touched by her words. If you ever need to talk, you can always find me here. I might not have all the answers, but I'm a good listener. She nodded, finishing the last details of her sketch. Thank you, Jenny. Sometimes it just helps to have someone who understands that creative fears can be overwhelming. He cleared his throat, feeling a wave of emotion. He recognized the sincerity in Lily's demeanor. She admired the person she believed him to be. That thought both comforted and unsettled him. After all, he was hiding a significant aspect of himself, and it didn't sit well with him that Lily was drawn to a persona he had constructed. Yet, as he watched her gather her supplies and wave goodbye for the night, Jake couldn't deny that he was happy to have met her, even in this unconventional way. Days melted into weeks, and Jake found himself anticipating Lily's visits. She continued working on her art project. Occasionally, she'd show him glimpses of her progress and even asked for his opinions, which she jotted down in the margins. Meanwhile, Samantha's Maid Cafe flourished. The staff grew more cohesive. The events they hosted, such as themed nights, drew in diverse customers, and the business edges gradually trended upward. Jake's dual life was tiring, yet strangely fulfilling. He'd return home late, peel off the wig and uniform, then reflect on the day's events. He tried to balance these thoughts with his morning routine as a barista. He often found himself checking the clock near closing time at his daytime job, eager to transform into Jenny again and see if Lily would show up. One evening, Lily came in with a smile that was brighter than usual. She ordered her typical cup of herbal tea and waved for Jake to join her. "Guess what?" she said as he approached. "What's up?" he asked, noticing a glow in her eyes. She pulled out a piece of paper from her bag. "The client approved my sketches. They loved them, so I'm moving on to finalizing them. I'm so relieved. They also said they're interested in working with me on future projects if all goes well." Jake felt genuine excitement on her behalf. "That's fantastic news, Lily. Congratulations." She exhaled, her shoulders finally relaxing. "Thanks. I'm finally feeling a bit more confident with this work. I actually feel like I might be on the right track." She paused, then added, "I wanted to do something to celebrate, but I don't have many friends in the city." He tilted his head. "Where did you move here from?" "A smaller town up north. I came here to try and break into the art scene," she explained, drumming her fingers on the table. "I was hoping to find a group of like-minded people, but it's been harder than I thought. I end up hanging around here a lot because, well, it's comfortable, and you're easy to talk to." Jake felt a warmth spreading through his chest. "I'm glad you feel that way. You deserve some celebration." She tapped her chin thoughtfully. "Maybe I could treat you to a cup of coffee somewhere else, just to say thank you for being supportive." His heart skipped a beat. That sounded dangerously close to a date invitation, and he wasn't sure how to navigate that while still in disguise. I'd love to, but my schedule's a bit tricky, he said carefully. I don't have many days off, and I'm not sure it would be appropriate for me to go out with a customer in uniform. She giggled. Who said you'd wear the uniform? You can meet me as yourself. I mean, the version of you without the apron. Lily then paused, realizing she had stepped into personal territory. But if you're not comfortable, I understand. Jake swallowed hard. He couldn't exactly tell her that he was a man named Jake, yet part of him wanted to accept. Maybe, he said. Let me think about it. My manager is kind of strict about us socializing outside of work, but if I can figure out a way, I'll let you know. She nodded slowly, respecting his hesitancy. That would be nice. Jake walked away with a tangle of emotions swirling inside him. He couldn't deny that he was drawn to Lily, but how could they possibly get closer if she believed he was Jenny? One busy Saturday night, Samantha decided to host a special event, complete with discounted dessert combos. The cafe was packed. Jake found himself rushing from table to table, trying not to trip over his skirt. In the midst of the rush, Lily walked in, looking around for a seat. The cafe was nearly full, but a small two-person table was free by the wall. Jake came over to greet her. "Busy night, huh?" he said. She nodded, smiling at the energy in the room. "I like it. It feels good to see this place thriving." She sat down, adjusting her bag. "I heard about the special dessert menu. Any recommendations?" Jake glanced at the chalkboard that listed the options. "The chocolate mousse cake has been a huge hit tonight. It's a collaboration with a local bakery we know." Lily beamed. "That sounds perfect. I'll have that and a pot of green tea." He jotted down her order. As he turned to leave, he spotted a group of new customers across the room. They were chatting loudly, one of them glancing around with an amused expression. Something about their demeanor set Jake on edge. He made his rounds to other tables, but he caught snippets of their conversation. "I heard this place has a new maid who's really tall," said one. Another one chuckled. "Bet she's not actually a woman." Jake felt his gut twist. He tried to ignore them, but an uneasy feeling followed him. The cafe was too busy for him to dwell on it, though, so he kept moving. Samantha looked concerned after noticing the men's loud remarks, but she was too swamped to confront them directly. She gave Jake a quick nod, signaling him to remain calm. Eventually, the group called him over, eyes flicking to his figure. He forced a smile. "Welcome. May I take your order?" One man sized him up, leaning back in his chair. "Sure, we'll get a round of iced coffees and some strawberry shortcake." Then he smirked. "So you're Jenny, huh? Heard some interesting rumors." Jake kept his tone even. "I'm not sure what you mean, but I'll place your order right away." As he turned, the man called after him. "Hold up. You're not going to deny it?" Jake paused, inhaled softly, and decided to keep things professional. "I'm sorry, sir, but I have other tables to serve. I'll be back with your drink soon." He hurried away, heart pounding. He caught Lily's concerned gaze from across the room. She mouthed, "You okay?" He nodded, forcing a reassuring smile. A little while later, Jake returned with the group's orders, careful not to engage in more conversation than necessary. As he set down the iced coffees, the same man leaned forward, a leer on his face. "You look uncomfortable. Why the need to hide?" Jake froze, but a small, firm voice spoke from behind him. Lily had stood up from her table and walked over, placing herself next to Jake. "Is there a problem here?" she asked quietly. The man shrugged. "We're just having a conversation. Why are you butting in?" Lily fixed her eyes on him. "Because you're making the staff uncomfortable. If you don't like the place, you can leave." Jake's pulse raced. partly in awe at Lily's courage and partly terrified that the scene would escalate. Samantha appeared at Jake's side, calm but stern. "Is everything okay here?" The man raised his hands defensively. Fine. We don't want trouble. We just heard rumors and came to check it out." Samantha's eyes narrowed, but she forced a polite smile. "We welcome everyone here, but not if you're going to harass my staff or customers." She glanced around. "Enjoy your food." With that, Lily and Samantha guided Jake away. Jake was trembling slightly, although trying to hide it. Lily touched his arm gently. "I'm sorry if I overstepped." He exhaled, shoulders sagging with relief. "No, thank you. That was brave of you." She smiled softly. "Sometimes you have to stand up for people who matter." Jake's heart fluttered at her words. Samantha gently steered him back into the kitchen for a moment. "You okay? They didn't recognize you or anything, right?" He shook his head. "I don't think so. They're just here to stir up trouble." She sighed. "Ignore them. It's not worth it. We'll keep an eye on them, and if they cause more trouble, we'll ask them to leave." With that, Jake returned to the floor, determined not to let the negativity ruin the evening. He glanced at Lily, who resumed her seat and mouthed a silent, "Thank you." She nodded in return. Thankfully, the group paid and left soon after without further incident. The rest of the night went smoothly, with the cafe's customers enjoying the special desserts and friendly service. After closing, Samantha, Jake, and the other maids cleaned up, chatting about the stressful moment, but also celebrating the overall success of the event. Later that night, as Jake walked out into the cool air, Lily was waiting by the entrance with her bag slung over her shoulder. She gave him a timid smile. "I'm glad everything worked out tonight. You handled it well." He swallowed, looking around to make sure none of the other customers were nearby. The street was mostly empty. "I appreciate you sticking up for me. It means a lot." She shrugged, her cheeks faintly pink. "I hate seeing you bothered by anyone. You've always been kind to me." They stood for a moment under a flickering street lamp, the quiet of the evening settling around them. Lily looked down at her shoes. "I'm worried, though. Are you safe doing what you do here? I don't like the idea that people might come just to harass you." Jake tried to formulate a response that didn't reveal too much. "It has its risks, I guess. But my sister is determined to keep things friendly. Most customers are wonderful." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I just want you to know that if you ever want to talk about anything, you can talk to me." Her words, full of genuine concern, nearly unraveled him. He had never had someone outside his family care so openly about his well-being. For a moment, he contemplated telling her the truth right then and there. But he stopped himself, uncertain how she would react. "Thank you," he finally said, giving her a gentle smile. "That means a lot, Lily." She nodded and yawned softly. "Well, it's late. I better go catch a bus." "Right," Jake said. "Good night." "Good night," she whispered, walking away. He watched her retreating form, feeling a pang of longing. He wished he could see her without this wig, without the facade. But how? The next week, Lily didn't show up at the cafe for a few days, and Jake found himself missing her presence. He tried not to dwell on it, but every time the door chimed, he'd glance up, hoping to see her. On Wednesday, Samantha noticed his restlessness. "You keep watching the door. Expecting someone?" she teased. Jake shrugged, trying to play it off. "I guess I'm just used to Lily being here." Samantha smiled knowingly. "Why not just ask her out? You clearly like her." He frowned. "Samantha, how can I do that when she thinks I'm Jenny? She has no idea who I really am. Besides, I don't want to jeopardize your cafe. If the truth gets out, the customers might feel misled." Samantha gave him a sympathetic look. It's a complicated situation, but you might have to tell her at some point. I'd rather not see you miserable. Jake sighed. I'll figure it out. Later that evening, Lily finally arrived. She seemed tired but smiled when she spotted him. He rushed over with a pot of tea. It's been a while. Everything okay? She nodded, setting her bag down. Yeah, just been locked up finishing those illustrations. But I'm done now, so I treated myself to a day off. Had to come here to unwind. Jake poured her tea gently, savoring the small moment of connection. Glad you're back. Are you feeling better now that the project is over? She exhaled. Yes and no. Finishing it felt amazing, but now I'm anxious about what's next. The magazine wants more drafts, so I have another round of work ahead. But at least I got paid for the first batch. He smiled. Well, you deserve to celebrate each step along the way. She took a sip and seemed to gather her thoughts. I've been thinking about that coffee I owe you. She looked up. What if we do it this Sunday? I have an idea of a nice spot downtown. You can just come in normal clothes, no uniform. I'd really like to hang out with you outside of here. Jake's heart raced. He hadn't expected another invitation so soon. Sunday? He stammered. I'll have to check my schedule. I do have the day off from the coffee shop. She grinned. That's perfect. Is your manager here going to let you off for a bit? He thought quickly. Samantha had told him she was open on weekends, but maybe she'd give him a break if he asked. I think so, he said. Let me confirm. Lily's eyes lit up. Great, let's exchange phone numbers so I can text you the address. Jake stiffened. Exchanging numbers meant he'd have to give her a phone number that might reveal he was, well, him. But maybe he could work around it. He pulled out his phone, silently praying the name on his phone screen wouldn't give him away. He quickly changed a setting so that instead of displaying Jake, it just showed initials. He hoped that would suffice. They exchanged contact info, and Lily grinned as she saved his name. I'm looking forward to it. Jake nodded, heart pounding. Me too. That Sunday, Jake took extra care getting ready. He decided he couldn't show up as Jenny, but he also worried Lily would immediately recognize him as the same person from the cafe. After all, if she saw his face without the wig and makeup, would she connect the dots right away or be confused? He styled his short brown hair neatly, wore a casual but nice shirt and jeans. He didn't overdo the look, wanting to appear as a regular guy heading out for coffee. He arrived at the small cafe downtown, a different place, cozy but more modern than his sister's. Lily was already waiting at a corner table, her sketchbook by her side. She had on a simple blue blouse and jeans, her hair tied back loosely. When she spotted Jake, she waved him over with a curious smile. Hi. Sorry, I guess I should call you Jenny. But I don't even know if that's your real name. Jake winced internally. You can just call me Jay for now, he offered, figuring it was close enough to his actual name. I mean, it's a nickname. She raised an eyebrow, but there was no immediate shock in her eyes. All right, Jay it is. She looked him up and down. It's funny, you look familiar, yet not exactly. I can't explain it. He settled into the chair opposite her. I guess you're used to seeing me in that maid uniform. This is the real me. She studied him, a thoughtful look on her face. Your eyes look the same, though. That's how I recognized you when you walked in. I'm glad you made it. He chuckled nervously. Me too. It's nice to see you outside of work. They ordered coffee and pastries, falling into a relaxed conversation about Lily's art, the city, and random tidbits of their personal experiences. Jake avoided discussing his family in too much detail, worried something might slip. Lily, for her part, shared some stories from her hometown, how she used to sketch on the porch of her family's house, her first attempts at painting, and how she made the choice to move to the city. Hours passed, and they realized the sun had lowered in the sky. Lily glanced at her phone. Wow, I didn't expect to stay this long. It's been fun. Jake smiled softly. Yeah, it has. She fiddled with the corner of her sketchbook. You know, I appreciate that you took a risk coming here as yourself. You didn't have to. You could have just told me no. He swallowed, feeling a slight ache in his chest. I wanted to see you. There's a lot I can't explain yet. She reached across the table and placed her hand on his for a brief moment. I won't pry. I'm patient. Jake's breath caught. Her hand was warm, and she wore a gentle expression that nearly undid him. He had to tell her the truth eventually, but not here, not now. He nodded, turning his hand over to give her fingers a soft squeeze. She smiled at the contact, then slowly withdrew her hand. Maybe next time, we can explore the art district. I'd love to show you some of my favorite galleries. Jake's heart felt lighter. That sounds fantastic. Over the following weeks, Jake continued to balance his 2 jobs and his new friendship with Lily. They met up twice more for short hangouts, strolling through the local park or grabbing quick lunches. Each time, Jake grew more aware of how strongly he cared for her. Yet, a creeping tension followed him, knowing that he was concealing an important truth. At the Maid Cafe, Lily still came in regularly as a customer. She would chat with Jenny, give updates on her artwork, and sometimes sneak a playful grin as if to say, I know who you really are, but I'll respect your boundaries. However, Jake sensed that she was starting to notice inconsistencies. For instance, she would comment on how Jenny's voice sometimes slipped in pitch, or how Jenny seemed more confident one day and oddly tense the next. Finally, one night after closing, Lily stayed behind once again, sketching as the lights dimmed. Jake helped the last customer pay and leave. Samantha was busy counting the register. Lily beckoned Jake over to her table. Hey, she said softly. I'm almost done with a piece I've been working on for a while. It's a portrait of you. Or rather, the version of you I see here. Jake looked down at her sketchbook. Indeed, she had drawn a figure in a maid uniform, but with gentle eyes that revealed something deeper. It took his breath away. It's beautiful, he whispered. She closed the sketchbook and exhaled. There's something I've been wanting to say. I think I know your secret. Jake's blood ran cold. You do? She stood, stepping closer. Her gaze flicked to the back room where Samantha was working. I've been piecing things together. The first time we had coffee, I saw the shape of your hands, the angles of your jaw. You didn't disguise yourself much, and then I realized how your sister fusses over you, the careful ways you speak around me. But I don't mind. I just want you to know that I won't judge you. Jake's throat felt tight. You're not upset? She shook her head. No, I'm sure you have reasons for doing this. It doesn't change how I feel about you. I like you, whether you're in that uniform or not. His eyes moistened, overwhelmed by relief and a tangle of emotions. Lily stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. May I see you outside of here, just as yourself, more often? You don't need to keep up this front with me. Jake nodded, tears threatening to spill over. Yes, of course. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. I was afraid of how you might react. She gave him a small, sad smile. I get it, but you don't have to be afraid. I'd like to keep coming here too. This place is special. But when I'm talking to you, I want to know it's okay to see you for who you are. Jake blinked, grateful beyond words. He glanced over his shoulder and saw Samantha lingering in the background, giving them space but clearly curious. He turned back to Lily, carefully placing a hand over hers. Thank you. She nodded, pulling him into a brief embrace. Even in the frilly dress, with the wig perched on his head. He felt more real than ever in that moment. Samantha squealed with excitement when she heard the news. "I'm so happy for you. And she's okay with everything?" Jake smiled, though there were still tears in his eyes. "Yeah, she's amazing, Sam. I don't even know how to express how grateful I am." Samantha hugged him. "I told you she was a keeper." Then she leaned back. "So, does this mean you'll keep working here as Jenny?" He let out a sigh of relief. "I think so, at least for now until you're more stable. Lily wants to keep coming, and she's not bothered by the illusion, but eventually we should figure out a long-term plan. I can't do this forever, especially if our relationship grows outside of work." Samantha nodded with understanding. "I know. I appreciate everything you've done. I think the cafe will be fine now that we have a steady flow of customers. When you're ready, we'll find a way to transition. But no rush. Let's just enjoy that things are finally looking up." Jake agreed, and that night he went home feeling lighter than he had in ages. For the first time, he felt free to be both Jake and Jenny without feeling like he was living a complete lie. The following weeks flew by in a pleasant blur. Lily and Jake spent more time together outside the maid cafe. She saw him in his casual attire, and though he still worked his day job, he made time to visit her art studio. He helped her tidy up the place, admired her paintings, and watched her draw. The awkwardness he feared never fully materialized. Lily seemed content to let him exist as he was, without putting him on the spot. At the cafe, customers continued to flock in, drawn by the friendly atmosphere and the novelty of the tall maid. Over time, some regulars started to suspect that Jenny might not be who she appeared to be, but Jake's polite demeanor and Samantha's firm boundaries kept the cafe running smoothly. If people whispered, they kept it to themselves, especially since the staff was always respectful. One cool autumn evening, as business started to slow down, Lily dropped by to show Jake a newly completed series of illustrations. He admired them at the counter while she sipped her tea. "These are incredible," he murmured, flipping through the pages. "Your style has evolved so much." She blushed lightly. "Thanks. I've been experimenting more and my client's been really supportive. They're actually featuring my pieces at a local art show next month. Would you come? As yourself, of course. I'd love to introduce you to the people there." Jake felt a surge of pride for her. "Of course I'll come. I wouldn't miss it." He reached out and squeezed her hand gently. She smiled, leaning in for a moment, unaware that Samantha was watching them from the other side of the cafe with a grin. That night, after closing, Jake walked Lily to the bus stop. The moon hung low in the sky, bathing the sidewalk in silver light. Lily clutched her sketchbook against her side as they spoke in hushed tones. "You know," she said, "when I first came to the maid cafe, I wasn't sure I'd fit in. I'm shy in social settings, but meeting you changed everything." Jake's chest tightened. "I'm glad you walked in that day. It's made my life richer too." He paused, swallowing the emotion that rose in him. "I appreciate how open you've been with me. Most people wouldn't be so understanding." She laughed softly. "Maybe I see a bit of myself in you. We're both trying to carve out a place in the world." She gazed at him, eyes warm. "I'm happy to be by your side, however that looks." He felt a faint trembling in his hands as he pulled her into a gentle embrace, mindful that they were in public. She relaxed against him, her breath soft against his shoulder. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it felt genuine, a simple acknowledgement of how deeply they cared for each other. When she pulled away, her eyes glistened. "See you soon, Jake." He smiled back. "See you soon, Lily." 1 month later, Jake finally decided it was time to reduce his role as Jenny. The cafe had reached a level of stability and popularity that allowed Samantha to hire a couple of new maids. These hires brought fresh energy without relying on the gimmick. Jake continued to help at night for a while longer, giving the new staff time to settle in, but he knew his days in the wig and uniform were numbered. Samantha supported him wholeheartedly. "You've more than repaid any favor I could have asked. Don't worry about the cafe. We'll manage." Jake nodded. "I'll still come by and help occasionally, but I'd like to focus on my own goals. I'm thinking of becoming a head barista, or maybe even opening my own small coffee place someday. And of course, I want to give Lily my time and attention." Samantha smiled. "That's the best ending I could hope for." On the final night that Jake dressed as Jenny, Lily came in wearing a simple floral dress. She sat quietly and drew the interior for old time's sake. As the cafe slowed down, she handed him her sketch. It was of Jenny serving tea, her tall figure and gentle expression rendered with delicate lines. The shading around the eyes was soft but expressive. "I wanted you to have a memory of this place," Lily said softly, sliding the sketch across the table. "It's where we met, where we became something special." He looked at it with misty eyes, touched by the depth of her gesture. "Thank you. I'll keep it safe." Carefully, he placed it in a protective sleeve. That night, after the cafe closed, the staff gathered in a small circle. Samantha gave a short speech thanking Jake for his months of dedication. The other maids applauded, and Clara even presented him with a small bouquet of flowers, giggling as she jokingly called him the best cross-dressing maid we've ever had. Jake removed his wig for the last time in the back room, feeling a strange mix of nostalgia and relief. As he stepped out, Lily was there waiting for him. She reached up and ran her fingers gently through his short hair, smiling. "I like this better," she said quietly, leaning in to kiss him softly on the cheek. He blushed, heart warm with gratitude. "I do too." Samantha watched them with watery eyes, but a beaming smile. They locked up the cafe together, a symbolic close to one chapter and the start of something new. The next morning, Jake woke up, feeling lighter. He had the day off and planned to spend it with Lily. She texted him to meet her at a small art gallery. He arrived wearing casual jeans and a light sweater. She was outside waiting, wearing a denim jacket and holding a cup of coffee. When he approached, she held it out to him. "For the best barista I know," she teased. He accepted it with a grin. "Thank you." They strolled into the gallery, admiring the paintings, sculptures, and mixed media installations. Soft music played in the background, and Lily guided him toward a corner where her own pieces were displayed. Jake felt a burst of pride seeing her name posted near the illustrations. She looked up at him with shining eyes. "None of this would have happened if I hadn't found the inspiration I needed at the Maid Cafe. Strange how life works." He placed an arm around her shoulders and whispered, "Sometimes it takes an unexpected path to get us to where we need to be." She nodded, resting her head against him briefly. They moved around the gallery, pausing occasionally so Lily could point out interesting details in other artists' work. Jake found himself thinking about the journey they had shared, how a struggling maid cafe and a timid artist had led to this moment. Eventually, they stepped outside into the crisp afternoon air. Lily turned to him. "So, what's next for you? Going back to life as a barista full-time? Or something more?" Jake shrugged, but a slight smile curved his lips. "I have ideas. Maybe I'll try to start my own little coffee spot. I've learned a lot about what makes a place feel comfortable for people. I think I can create that atmosphere." She beamed. "I believe you can." They walked down the sidewalk together, the sun filtering through the trees. Lily reached for his hand, and he laced his fingers through hers. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental in its simplicity. He'd come so far from the first day Samantha asked him to wear that frilly outfit. As they strolled, Lily asked, "Do you regret any of it? Wearing the uniform, keeping up the disguise?" Jake thought for a moment. "It was difficult at times, but I can't regret something that led me to meeting you and helping my sister. If anything, it taught me about pushing boundaries and finding what really matters." She nodded in quiet agreement. "I'm glad you don't regret it. I certainly don't." They continued walking hand in hand, their steps in unison. Ahead lay new challenges: Jake's ambition to open a coffee place, Lily's budding art career. But they were ready to face them, comforted by the knowledge that they were no longer isolated in their struggles. They had found genuine companionship, formed by shared experiences and strengthened by honesty. When they reached Lily's studio, she turned the key and opened the door. Inside were canvases lined against the walls, some finished, others incomplete. A comforting smell of paint and paper filled the space. She looked over her shoulder, a playful smile on her lips. "Want to see my new piece?" she asked. Jake nodded, following her inside. "Always." She led him to an easel draped with a cloth. Pulling it back, she revealed a nearly finished painting of two figures, one dressed in a maid uniform, the other in casual clothes. Their faces were close, as if locked in conversation. The setting was the interior of a cafe. The brushstrokes captured the gentle warmth in their eyes. Jake felt his throat tighten. "It's beautiful." She reached out to touch his arm. "It's our story, or at least part of it." They stood there side by side, taking in the painting's quiet power. Then Lily said softly, "I think I'll call it Harmony in Unexpected Places." Jake chuckled at her creative title. "I like it. It captures everything." She nodded, gazing fondly at the canvas. After a moment, she turned to him and whispered, "You and I, let's keep moving forward, wherever that leads." Jake squeezed her hand gently. "Absolutely." The afternoon light drifted through the windows, illuminating their figures and the painting that symbolized a chapter of their life. A chapter filled with frilled aprons, playful misunderstandings, heartfelt confessions, and an unbreakable bond forged through compassion. They had found something real amid the swirl of cafe orders and the rustle of skirts, something that gave them hope for the path ahead.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.